When I was young, my parents used to send me. We used to go to this Christian summer camp every summer. And I remember when I was around the age of 12 or 13 years old, I was like a skater kid. I was kind of shy. I had hair like I believed I wanted my hair to be like I was in a member of Duran Duran. Not sure that it actually looked that way. But that's what I was going for. I had my skateboard. I had my eccentric clothing. And I was on this beautiful campground. And this was the year that I went. Or one of the more notable years that I went. This is the story. This is the story that I'm telling you about here. It was the first day of summer camp, and I was hanging out talking to a few other people my age. I did not have a mullet. I had the opposite of a mullet. It was like I had the back of the head shaved, and it was like long in the front, kind of over my eyes. This dude rolled up. And he rolled up in a Triumph convertible MG. It was from the mid-60s, 1960s. It was a super awesome, classic James Bond looking car, right? And it was blaring this really wild kind of music I had never heard before. And the guy driving it just looked pretty badass. And then he stopped the car to talk to a few of the girls. And then he said to me, "Do you skate?" And I say, yeah, I skate. He said, "Cool." He said, "You want to hop in?" And I said, "Sure, man." So he nodded his head, "Jump in." So I threw my skateboard in the back. And then we took off, and I was listening to this crazy music. I'm like, "What is this, man?" He's like, "Oh, this is Black Flag." And that was like a hardcore punk rock band back in the day. Really crazy sound and stuff. I had never heard it before. I was only 13 years old. So I'm like, all right. But then it didn't stop there. Then he played, it was like a mix. It was like a mix. And then the next song was like kind of different, but weird. And I'm like, well, what's this? He said, "Oh, this is Depeche Mode." I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So it was like kind of new wave, whatever. And on and on. And there were 2 meetings we had to go to per day for these teen Christian camp meetings. And one was like around morning, like 10 a.m. And the other one was around evening, about 6 p.m. or 7 p.m., 7 p.m. And there was a talent contest. There's a talent contest that was supposed to transpire on the last night. There was a talent contest. There was a talent contest at the end on the last night of the week of this Christian teen summer camp. And the older guy that was like 17 years old at the time, that was the skater dude. He says to me, "I got an idea for the talent contest. I want you to be a part of it." And I said, "What is it?" And he said, "We're going to perform this song that's really cool." And I said, "I don't play anything." And he said, "That's okay. I have a bass guitar and I have all the equipment here, and you're going to play bass." So I said, "I don't play bass, man. I can't do this." He says, "You're going to do it. Today's Tuesday. We perform Friday." I said, "Okay." So he made me a copy of the song. And the song was by a band, and you can look it up. I still think it's a great song. It's actually in the movie The Lost Boys. It's called I Still Believe by a band called The Call. I Still Believe by The Call. So he made me a copy of this song, and I took it back to my cabin, and I listened to it obsessively, specifically the bass. I never played bass before. He let me borrow the bass, and I would just put my headphones on, and I would listen to the song over and over again and try to figure out all the bass parts just by ear with zero experience of playing bass. The next day, I had my first rehearsal, and he had all the equipment set up in this garage on the campgrounds there. His family had rented out like a house that they were staying in for the week there. And he had all the band equipment in the garage of this house on this campus, on this campground site. So we started to rehearse the song for the first time on Wednesday. I was playing with an experienced guitarist, this 70-year-old cool dude. And then there was a drummer who was very experienced as well. And then there was a synthesizer guy, a keyboard synth guy. And then there was me, a 13-year-old kid with no experience. I was the youngest one in the lot. The bass plugged in. I strum it. And I was like, whoa, all right. And then I proceeded to try to play the song that I'd been listening to over and over again in my headphones without an amplifier. And we proceeded to try to play the song. They sounded pretty good. It was all a little sloppy when you're first learning a song, of course. But I sounded terrible. Okay. So I proceeded to try to play, and I sounded terrible. I sounded awful. I was butchering this thing. I felt embarrassed. I felt humiliated in front of these guys that were all a couple years older than me, that were all had some experience as musicians. I felt so stupid. I'm like, why am I even in this? I'm just making a fool of myself. These guys know what they're doing. I don't. How am I going to do this? Well, after that rehearsal, I went straight back to my cabin. I spent every waking moment outside of the meetings that I had to go to playing the song over and 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 over again. And over 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 again. And then I came back to that garage the next day where we agreed to meet at the same time in between the two meetings to do another garage rehearsal for this song for the talent show. I plugged in. I sucked. I sucked just as bad as the day before when I started to play it again. But the other guys are all noticeably better. They are all starting to sound pretty darn good. I was just as bad. But something happened. Something happened after the first 30 minutes of playing it. Something just started clicking, and I started sounding a little less horrible. The natural rhythm and arrangement started clicking a bit more. And this is the first time I experienced any ounce of hope in this venture. I was like, okay, I don't sound great, but I don't sound horrible. I don't sound horrible anymore. Then the guy that was taking me under my wing, and he ended up going on to becoming basically my big brother, a role model for me during those years. We ended up becoming long-term friends at those a few years after that anyway. He just kind of gave me a nod. And it was that nod. And all that nod said a lot. And what that nod said to me was, you're getting it. You're doing good. You're getting it. And that's all I needed. And so now it's Thursday. I went directly home, back to my cabin. I did not pass go. I did not collect 200 right from that garage rehearsal. And I put my headphones on and I played it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Then I went to the night meeting. Instead of hanging out with the other kids at camp, which I love to do more than anything, I went back to my cabin and I plugged in my headphones. I took that bass guitar and I played that damn song over and over and over and over and over and over again. Now, I wake up. It's Friday. Go to my morning meeting, my teen challenge meeting. Right afterwards, in between the meetings, was another rehearsal. This is our final rehearsal before the talent contest that evening. I plug the bass in again. I start off rocky again. But as we proceeded, I was even a little better. I started getting it a little better than even the day before. Now, I'm at least playing it adequately, where it sounds like a band now. At least sounds like a band. I sounded like the weakest link within that band, but at least it sounded like a band. And that was the first time I actually thought to myself, maybe I could pull this off. Maybe it's possible for me to pull this off. I went home. I played that song over and over and over and over again until it was time for the night gathering, the night meeting, the last meeting of the whole week, Friday night, before everybody leaves to go home Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, whatever. This is the apex of the entire week. The place was packed. The lights were low. Several hundred kids in there. And then I think we were like the last, and we were the last people up at the contest. And we saw everyone do their thing, everything from lip syncing to, girls doing solo acts and singing to like some dance troops, things like that. And then we were the last to go on. Brad, who had turned out to be like my big brother figure at the time, this cool 17-year-old guy, he turns to me and said, "Take this." I'm like, "What is that?" He says, "It's a glow stick, and we're all getting one." I go, "What do you want me to do with this glow stick?" He said, "I want you to crack it in half." He says, "Because that's how it glows." I'm like, "Okay." He says, "Then I want you to put it in your mouth, sideways." I said, "Why?" It's because it's dark out there, and every time we open our mouths will be glowing and emanating. I said, yeah, that does sound pretty cool. So that's what we all did. We snapped a glow stick and launched it in our mouths like this. And I don't know how, but he managed to sing through that. And he did a pretty good job. So the lights are low. They announce us. We walk on. About 300 kids. And wouldn't you know it, the girl that I had an enormous, massive, and I mean massive crush on was standing right in the front row, looking at us. She knew that I liked her, even though I didn't have courage enough to talk to her the whole week. But it was like that puppy love vibe where we would lock eyes. She would smile at me. I would smile back. And then one of us would look down. Keep in mind, guys, I was 13. This is what 13-year-old kids do. So I see her. I see the sea of kids. The lights are low. They announce our name. I walk up in front of the crowd. There's the bass plugged into the amp that I've been rehearsing on all week. I break out into a cold sweat. My palms, balmy, cold sweat. My heart rate incredibly elevated. My nerves are just vibrating with anxiety. My whole body is just buzzing. I felt dizzy. I felt nauseous. I felt like I was going to pass out. I walked on. I slung that bass over my shoulder. I picked that pickup. I looked at all three of these guys that were 3-4 years my seniors. I was the runt. I was the inexperienced runt, the ragtag kid. I even thought, what the hell am I doing up here? And then, the bass part for the song was such an integral part of the song. Yeah? And the song started with me. It started with me, guys. So then Brad had the guitar. He was in front of me. He turned around and he looked at me and he gave me the nod. And that nod meant, hit it, kid. And I hit it. And for some act of God, when I began to play, I was right on rhythm. I was like a freaking metronome. I was focused like a laser. My resolve was absolute. At that moment, I didn't see a crowd. I didn't see my crush. I didn't see anything else but my band and what I had to do. And this is the song. It sounded like this. And on it went. On and on it went, folks. And during that 4.5 minutes, when it ended, the whole crowd went silent. And I didn't know what that meant. I looked out the crowd. They were seemingly looking blankly, staring at us. I looked at the girl that I had a crush on. Her name was Carlina. She was looking blankly at me. And then, all of a sudden, the crowd absolutely erupted into full-blown applause. Screaming, hollering, complete ecstatic elation from all 300 of those kids. They absolutely love it. We absolutely tore the house down. And at that moment, I started to have tears well up in my eyes. I really had to prevent myself from crying. Especially with my crush looking at me. And I just was really proud of myself in that moment. I really overcame a lot internally. And then we didn't win the talent contest, but we did get second. We got second. And I don't know what the prize was for second, but we got second. I feel like, especially in hindsight, we totally should have got first. But I think the reason why we didn't get first is because for Christian Teen Summer Camp, performing that song was pretty edgy. It was pretty edgy, so they went with a safer option. And then afterwards, everybody went over to this big bonfire party. This big bonfire party for one last hurrah for all the teens before we all went our separate ways. And I was at that bonfire, and there was Carlina standing by herself, kind of glancing over, looking at me. And then when I looked back at her, she looked straight ahead, pretending she didn't glance over at me. And then cool guy Brad walked up to me. He was 17 years old, very good with the girls, much more seasoned than my 13-year-old self was. I was still very wet behind the ears, obviously. He said to me, "Well, kid, what are you waiting for? Does she need to make a sign?" I said, "No, it's just, he's like, "You're just what?" He said, "Stop thinking about it. Just go up and talk to her." And I said, "Oh, what do I say?" He says, "It doesn't matter what you say." And of course, the smoke alarm goes off at the most worst opportune time possible. I have a lady friend making steaks for us downstairs, but I think she got it under control. So hopefully the smoke alarm doesn't go off again. And I said, "Well, I don't know what to say." He says, "It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you say. Just say something. You just have to be present." And so I took a deep breath. I grabbed a s'more. I quickly assembled a s'more with the gooey marshmallow, 2 graham crackers, and a couple big squares of Hershey's chocolate. And I walked up to Carlina. She was cute as a button. And she looked up at me, and I just said to her, she said, "Yes? Yes?" I said, do you want to split us some more?" There was a pause. She looked down. For a fleeting moment, I had thought that I may be failing. And then she looked up, and a big smile came across her face. She said, "Yeah, I would. I would." So I broke that s'more in half. I gave her the other half of my s'more. And then she just proceeded to talk my ear off. She was so happy. She was so happy. And then at the end of that night, we went for a little walk in the distance in the nighttime, surrounded by all this nature and stuff. We were holding hands, and I gave her a kiss goodnight. And when you give, it was my second kiss of my life. But when you kiss someone when you're 13 years old, it's a really big freaking deal. Your whole body and mind and emotions respond to it with such intensity. It's not like kissing someone when you're an adult. It's totally two different things. And so then that happened. I kissed my big crush, and I just literally saw and felt fireworks. Absolute fireworks, you guys. And I went home just stumbling back to my cabin that night. And then as I was stumbling back, somewhat love-struck back to my cabin that night, it was the first time in my life I felt genuinely cool. That people genuinely perceive me as the cool guy. I was the cool guy. And that was really mind-blowing to me. Really mind-blowing to me. And that's pretty much the end of my story. That's the end of it, guys. I know that was a long one. But I hope you enjoyed it.